guys, welcome back. I'm so excited you're here. I have some stuff to catch you up on before we jump into part three of this story. So, I'm going to get myself grounded with some Palo Santo. Palo Santo is basically wood, and this one I believe gets shipped to me from Acuna. I apologize if I said the wrong place, but correct me if you know where Palo Santo is sourced. I'd love to know. It's just not coming into my brain from where it came from at this moment. I have a hard time remembering words, possibly some dyslexia. We're working on understanding that right now. But anyway, Palo Santo really helps like cleanse the energy, especially if it's like really heavy energy. So for this conversation, I just want to make sure I'm grounded. And so you can ground yourself with me if you'd like. Take in a couple deep breaths. And we're just going to be here for this conversation. So I am grounding myself because there's going to be some heavier topics that we talk about. I tried to really preface us with the last conversations, part one and part two. If you haven't seen those yet, I recommend watching them. It's going to help you understand this part three story. So in this one, we're going to be talking about um, my experience with coming out and how that affected friendships, family, um, and also it does incorporate other people's stories, but I am not going to be sharing their names or who they are or give identification of who they are. But in the parts that their lives that played into my life, I will share my experience. Obviously, I cannot tell you their experience fully because it's different from their perspective, their point of view, and from their experiences in life form their realities, right? So I can only share with you my experience. And so with that being said, we're going to also talk about my experience with people in my life that experience cancer. We're going to talk about losing friends, losing family, which is a part of the shedding that does happen with us as individuals of the LGBTQIA plus community. Excuse me, 2S LGBTQIA plus community. And so there's going to be a heavierness in this conversation, but I want you to know, and I want your subconscious to know that at the end of this conversation, there's going to be joy, there's going to be happiness, and there's going to be more of a sense of resolve. So for that inner child that's within you, that's like maybe feeling like, oh my God, this is going to be really hard. Know that we go through hard things and also it helps grow us and it helps transform us. So, what else we're going to be talking about? Leaving the church and how that continuing of that separation between me and the church continued. And uh, I think that's all the preface I want to preface you with. At any point in the conversation, if you're ever like, that's just a lot for me to handle right now, that's totally fine. You can pause it and you can come back to this later. This is going to live on this platform for a long time. Anyway, so before we dive into the very the more challenging experiences in life, I want to share with you my recent trip that I had with my sisters. So my little sister just had her 24th birthday, and so to celebrate, we went to San Antonio, we went shopping, and we had so much fun. But for me, I kind of had some online shopping happen before as I was looking for a new bag and something to really embody the next phase in my life that I'm stepping into. And so for me, what I like to do is I like to purchase things that really embody that energy. So I within the last month or two have learned about Labubus. Now, if you don't know what Labubus are, they're like these cute, fuzzy, monster-looking things. Like it just can't. They're so cute. And I was able to purchase one. So like apparently it can be really hard to get like the Labubu that you want. And even so, you can purchase them on Pop Mart. Unfortunately, you can only see them because they're always sold out. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but I do want to share with you the Labubu that I just recently purchased. So this is Happiness. So fucking cute. And also apparently there's dupes. So to know if there's a dupe or not, I don't know. Maybe look to see if there's a Pop Mart tag. Anyway, apparently there are dupes out there that really aren't the Labubus. Anyway, I love this. Happiness is helping me embody happiness and what that looks like right now in my life as a 30-year-old. And right now, that looks like buying things for my inner child that I never got to have growing up. And however, these weren't around, but I, as a kid, never really got to experience the fun of having like charms and knick-knack things like that, or even video games. So for me to purchase this for myself was just like a really fun treat and a really fun healing experience for my inner child. And this fanny pack, I just love this. All of this, this shit that I'm showing you, none of this is sponsored, obviously. I bought these things myself and I'm sharing them with you because I want to. Nobody's paying me jack shit. Okay, love this bag. It's a fawn bag, and then a friend of mine gave me this Queer AF. I don't know if you can see it. Queer AF, a pin, but I have it on my zipper, and it's the pride flag in the background. So I just love this. I wear it out, and it just brings me so much joy. I can remember as a kid having things never really brought me joy. Um, they just didn't. And there's a lot that goes into that, but basically, I was an adult child, so I ended up having to help raise excuse me, need a sip of water. I ended up having to help raise my little sister when I was around the age of 6 or 7, so I didn't have much of a childhood. Granted, I didn't have a childhood. I was an adult. And so there's these moments in life where I'm getting to like go back in time and be able to heal these different parts of me right now in my right now time of living. And so doing things like buying something that I wanted, not that was like within a certain price range that my parents could afford, like that kind of thing. And even as a little kid, I all of my shit came from Walmart. And at that time in my life, that was embarrassing. It was really embarrassing. And because I didn't get to go to the mall or like even Target or stores like that to get clothes or go to like Kohl's or anything, that maybe happened a lot later in my childhood. But like clothes, having my needs met weren't met with love. They were met with like, okay, fine, I'm gonna get this for you. Um, and then they had a ton of excuses, blah blah blah. I don't want to dive into that. That's a whole other conversation of inner child healing, but that's one of the reasons why I purchase myself things that are fun and cute right now because it's really healing my inner child. So, if that spoke to you on any level, I encourage you to lean into that and hear what the inner child has to say. I'm gonna grab one more sip of water and then I want to jump right in to part three of this conversation. Okay, so I believe from part two conversation, we left off around the part of my life where I came out to my friend. We had dinner at a Mexican restaurant. And after that, our interactions really started to change. So, again, if you haven't listened to this story, I suggest listening to part two so that you can have the pieces connect it so that you can hear part three from a more listener perspective so that you know some of the pieces that involve this part of the story. So, um, my friend and I, like I had mentioned in the previous parts of this story, we were very connected. And so, after sharing with them that I am gay and this feels right for me, and this is who I am. And stepping into owning that, I believe that really embodying that, pardon me, embracing that and allowing myself to feel, know, and experience being a lesbian took a lot longer than just a one day, a one moment to be like, I'm gay. It's more than that. And so for me, after sharing that with her, um, things began to be more distant between us, and our relationship began to be, it was like this separateness and like this differentiation between us and who I was embodying and who I was truly embracing being a lesbian. I think it was really triggering for them. However, I don't really know the truth for them. I can only assume. So, there was one conversation, one incident that happened that really was one of the next part in our relationship that really started to drive a wedge in our relationship, like cutting pasta. When you cut pasta when it's in its dough form, you start to separate out the parts. It's still dough, it's still becoming pasta, but you separate them apart so that it can be like easier to turn into like spaghetti or macaroni or whatever the pasta is, shape to be formed. So like things were starting to take shape. They were starting to take form in her life and mine. And there was a separateness, like forming dough. And so at this part, it felt like there were multiple parts starting to be separated within the relationship and as individuals. So my part that started to really separate me from the relationship was when a comment was made at a restaurant where it was something along the lines, well, let me back up. I was there with my friend and then a friend that we both knew at that time. And we went out to Sunday, like lunch, more like a dinner. It's like a late afternoon meal. And not that that matters, but it matters to me. And so we were getting a meal, and somewhere in the conversation, again, some of the like pieces of it aren't super clear, but I'm gonna give my best remembrance of this story to give it to in the best of my ability. So, um, there was a comment made of like, why is everyone coming out as gay? And remember, at this point in my life, I'm still kind of involved in the church as just a member of a church. I'm not volunteering because that shit affects your life. Wasn't volunteering as much anymore. I was just there to make friends and do this church thing that I knew to do because I did that growing up, like going to church every single Sunday. And then once on like Thursdays for meeting with people that were around my age. And really, what I truly wanted was to make friends because my entire life up to that point, I was having a hard time making friends. It just felt like I didn't know what was up and I didn't know how to connect. Um, so we're at this dinner and the comment was made of like, why is everyone coming out as gay all of a sudden? And well, you and I know that there's more to that than it's just like everybody's got COVID. Like this isn't an infection. This isn't a disease. This isn't like some problem. And so That statement being said over a meal, I shut down. I was pissed, I was hurt, and I really didn't know what to do. I truly didn't. And so I was pretty much done having conversation. And as soon as the ticket came, I was ready to head out. We walk out together and we give like hugs. You know, have you ever like left a conversation and you felt fueled after that versus having a conversation and you left just feeling more empty? I felt more empty. I felt less seen, not heard. In that moment, I think my response was like, why is that a problem? And in my personal opinion, I think that they were both closeted, but that's my own opinion and I can have it. Is that their truth? I don't know. That's for their journey, not mine. That's for them to figure out. I'm not going to spoil it for them or make it easier for them to figure that out. Go on your own journey. Anyway, so like I left giving like these really flat, unemotional hugs, leaving to go to my car. And so later that day, my friend comes over and I'm in my room as I normally was while I was in college on Sundays. I was getting prepped and ready to go for my busy week ahead of school. And so she comes in and she ends up apologizing for that comment. And she said something along the lines of, like, after I made that comment, I knew that I messed up and I knew that it hurt you. And so she wanted to apologize. And I think I mentioned in the last video that we had another conversation where we were talking in my room and so these moments were separate. So this other moment that happened was, I don't remember where it falls on the timeline, but I know it is significant because it really impacted me and it impacted our relationship. So at another time, she comes to talk to me and she basically says that if you ever come on to me, we're done. We're not friends. And basically, like, I'm not going to talk to you. And so looking back, I recognize how I was being and why I had the response I had. But immediately after she said that to me, I was like, well, fuck. You know, I was really hurt. I didn't know how deep of a hurt it was until months later. So it was just kind of like just one more heavy thing to have to hold on to, just kind of like one more thing that I gotta be careful around this person so they don't think I'm gonna come on to them. I will admit, like, yeah, I was not experiencing, but like thinking about if I had feelings for them or if I didn't. I recognized that we really cared for each other and we really loved each other as friends. And after she made that really hard boundary, I started to start I started to back away from the relationship because I didn't want to be accused of coming on to someone and not having any other eyes to actually witness that moment. And if those other people around would actually be able to see me, or if they would just judge me for being gay and put the wrong on me. And I didn't want her to be in any uncomfortable experience or interaction with me. So I slowly just began to be shut down in the relationship, and I didn't know how to verbalize that to her because at that moment, my relationship was setting boundaries was just different. I didn't really know how. I was still exploring and understanding because growing up, my understanding of boundaries was from my parents, and what they would say is like, because I said so. And so there was no space for me to learn how to be an autonomous person, to be a person that could make decisions for themselves and express what they wanted, what they needed, and what they want or didn't want in a relationship. I didn't have the language to express that. So therefore, I shut down. I went back into the closet in another sense, but not about necessarily having them know I was gay, but going back into the closet of like, nobody's gonna accept me for who I am fully, and I just showed you who I was. Why would you assume that I would come on to you? Like, it's not like we're out here just flapping to just be with anyone. That's not how this works. Like, do you think that about your guy friends? Like, are they just gonna flop onto you? Some of them do. Some of them be doing that shit, but that's another story. There is a stereotype about pastor kids, about how they just have so many sexual experiences. Get your shit together and stop coming on to these women just because they're pretty. And stop having women make themselves look a certain way so they don't tempt the man. Fucking hate that shit. That was taught to me. And that was one of the beliefs that I have learned to have to throw out over and over and over and over again. Still unlearning it. Anyways, so she comes over to the house once or twice a week to tutor my little sister. And then on Sunday, she would come by sometimes to watch games or whatever because she didn't have cable, I believe, or I don't even know if she had internet at her apartment at that time. But anyways, the door was open for her to come in the house whenever she wanted, and we would also share like Sunday meals with her. And so it was like her home away from home. And so eventually months go by. And it was one winter I entered, so at the time in college, I was getting my major in psychology and minoring in art. During my senior year, in what was required for getting a minor in art, I was working on this big project, and it involved like multiple pieces of work that I then ended up, I don't know if the word is like auditioning, but I ended up putting my work up to be basically judged, to then be put up in this local bar. Was it like a wine bar? It's like a artsy place and you drink wine. So whatever we call those. And it made it in. My so in in these things, it's not for free. Like you have to pay for them to judge your art and then it to be put up and you don't get that money back. So it costed me $50 to do that, and that was a lot as a college kid to hand over $50 just for you to tell me if you like my art or not. Anyway, it made it, and I got recognition. I didn't win any of the places. I didn't even win a ribbon. I was just basically recognized in our small town in a higher end local place for people where they go hang out and drink wine. So at that moment, it was a big deal for me to have entered my work in and it make it because apparently I learned later on that my professor, um, who I had classes with at that time that helped me in understanding my artistic process, had tried to get their pieces of work in this spot and couldn't. And so I had weird feelings about it of like, oh my God, my art made it and yours didn't. And also like upset about who won. It was like a white canvas with just a black line. Like, that's beautiful for some people, but like, I put hard work into my piece, and there was a bunch of other pieces around. It's like oil canvases and all these other pieces that were really like time went into those, hard work went into those, and they didn't even win. So I suspect that the judges, like the whole situation was rigged just for favoritism, and that shit pisses me off. So like my shit was good, and there were a lot of other artists that had good work too. But let me get back to the point. Excuse me. Um, so there was a celebration for the opening night of the show. So my art pieces were going to remain in this bar for about a month. So that was also really cool. So my friend, um, to celebrate me, goes and sees my work too, and it's a beautiful night. Excuse me. It's a beautiful night, and we all get to hang out. But the energy between her and I was just this really awkward, like she was uncomfortable around wine and cigars and people smoking, people getting drunk, like that lifestyle really made her feel uncomfortable. And for me, I enjoyed being around that space with the artists, with wine, and eating the snacks that they had on the table. Like, I was enjoying myself. And so, two different experiences were going on in the same moment. And so, there I am being celebrated. My family's there, my friends are there. But then there's this other dynamic that's going on between me and my friend. I felt like I was still really hurt by her saying that if I ever come on to her, that whole thing, I was still really hurt. And I didn't know that how I was being was because I was still very hurt. I didn't have the language really to be able to express that I was in a lot of pain and that it deeply, deeply cut me. And so it's like she's there and I wanted her to be there, but also at the same time, like, you hurt me. Like, you really hurt me. And I don't know what to do about that. But I think I want you here. I don't know. So my body language ended up being more avoidant towards her. And like, I remember she was sitting right next to me, and I just felt like I couldn't be myself around her. Again, for some obvious reasons and some not so obvious. And so I'm trying to be kind at the same time of trying to make sure she feels comfortable, but not really doing a good job about it, while also wanting to be with my friends who want to celebrate my artwork with me, but it felt like maybe she wasn't really about it or she was uncomfortable. So there was just a lot of weird stuff going on that I didn't really know how to navigate, and I don't know if she fully understood how to navigate it either. So the night ends, she leaves early. I walk out with my other friends at that time, and my sister was there as well. Not my little sister. I think she was still in high school or had to work the next day, something like that. So she didn't get to make it. So things between us began to be even more, there became less. time of us hanging out, less um of her coming over to the house to just hang out, and less of me reaching out to want to hang out. And me, I started to not go to that young adult group anymore because I didn't feel seen. And I knew that that church, like it seemed as though they accepted queer individuals because I remember seeing what I assumed, and I could be wrong, a lesbian couple there. And it seemed like I could notice some of the more queer individuals there, but maybe they weren't out yet. So a lot of unclear, lots of unclear of where this church stood for the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. And so I was like feeling this internal understanding of like, I don't want to be here. I don't want these friends. I don't want this lifestyle. I don't even think I believe in Christianity or am a Christian anymore. So like a lot of things becoming undone in my life, a lot of separation, a lot of a lot of different separate like pasta dough. Like we had macaroni, we had bow tie, we had spaghetti, we had angel hair that looked like spaghetti but it wasn't, and ravioli. Like there was a modge podge of relationships and things going on, but they don't, like you don't eat ravioli in the same bowl of macaroni. We just don't. And if you do, more power to you, but I don't. I don't eat ravioli and mac and cheese in the same bowl or even in the same bite. So things were becoming more separated. People were changing, and change is good. But that doesn't mean that that change doesn't come without pain, without hurt, without heartbreak, without a difficult experience. It definitely wasn't easeful to live through. So well, actually, our interactions become less and less frequent. And I am still in a place of like, I don't want to lose this friendship, but it kind of felt like I was losing this friendship. And I didn't know what to do, so I just remained very silent and not very vocal about how I was truly feeling. And that's on me, but I've learned from that experience. Um, so in my now experience, I am more vocal and I am more communicative. But in that relationship, all I knew to do was be quiet and like shrink in our relationship. And so there finally came a point where things really started to shift. And I felt like there was a distancing, but then sometimes we would come back together, we would hang out a little bit more, and we wouldn't talk about the lesbian gay stuff. It might come up in conversations, but usually that was just kind of put on the shelf in the relationship. And there was even one time back when Texas experienced the massive winter blizzard. We even went to pick up my friend and we brought her to the house because she had only pickles left to eat at her house. So I was like, girl, you were coming over. And so we pick her up. She ends up staying with us for about a week because that week in Texas, when it was extremely cold, things were frozen. People were out of electricity, water, heat. Like it was ridiculous because Texas isn't prepared for that kind of shit. Like the best that they got, the best tool in my town that we have for crazy winter weather is just like sprinkling salt on the road. We've gotten a little bit better, and now they'll spray that liquid stuff. like antifreeze on like the loop or the highway or major roadways, and then that's about it. So everybody really panics now when it comes to the crazy winter that we experience around January, February, and we're all just like hoping we don't have to go through that again. Um, so eventually I did tell my little sister that I was gay. I told her while we were doing like pedicures, and she was like, "What?" Like she had the best experience. She was so excited. She was so excited. And then I told her like, "Please don't tell mom and dad yet." And she doesn't do well with secrets. So eventually I tell my mom. I told her and I was crying. Um and that was kind of a sweet moment, and she didn't know what to do. Like, my parents grew up very religious and part of the Assembly of God, like church within Christianity, and also its own religion. Um, because like each church within Christianity just believes different things. Some agree on things and some disagree on things. So then finally, when it came to telling my dad, about a month later of telling my mom, that experience was really hard for me, to be just plainly honest with him, because I felt like my dad was like, I did share with y'all the weird experience I had of like turning 13 and that whole thing, but like mine and his relationship was different, especially into my 20s. I felt like he tried to be supportive in my decisions, but there was his own uh, inability to regulate his own emotions, to know how to teach a child to be autonomous. And also, he grew up with all boys in the house. Not that that's an excuse, but it does shape his experience. And he then was a parent of all girls. So there were some differences there. But his parenting style was more like, I do the punishment and the wife just like kind of kept the home, but not really. For a while there, she was a housewife until my mom went to nursing school. While she was in nursing school, my sister and I raised our younger sister. And so the relationship with my dad wasn't a relationship that was like, he's my person or he's my friend. It was kind of a relationship of like, I have to respect my dad. And if I make a choice or decision that he disagrees with, he's going to argue with me about it until I actually see it from his point of view. So later in life, I find out that my parents are narcissists. One's more mental, one's more emotional. So with my dad, he's more of like the emotional narcissist. So he will argue all day long until you see it from his point of view. And I experience a lot of like gaslighting from just having conversations where it was coming across as like, I'm right, you're wrong. And until you see it as it's right from my perspective, you are wrong. So I couldn't disagree. If I disagreed, it affected my safety in a sense of like, it would be hard to be around each other because of the conversation might have been so much in disagreement that they would like deem me as wrong and bad. And so my responses had to be in my relationship with him had to be very edited, because it's like, I don't know if you're going to be angry today, and I don't know if you're going to be happy after this. So it's like he was the last one to tell. My parents were the last ones to tell. And so it was a very finicky thing for me to figure out at that point, without even, and I didn't know at that point that my parents were narcissists. I just knew that going into this, I don't know if they're going to kick me out of this house. and I want to keep my safety and I want to keep um, being able to eat food and I want to have a roof over my head and I want to have a car and I want it to have car insurance. And while I was in college, they were paying for my car insurance and the car payment was on me, gas was on me, buying my food while I'm out and about was on me. Um, so all in all, I didn't really have a very nurturing relationship or a very nurturing experience from them growing up. So telling my dad wasn't like, oh my God, he's gonna see me for who I truly am. It's, oh my God, I have to tell you this, and I'm really scared if you're gonna kick me out of the house. And I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't know what to do next. I just knew that I was being pressured from my mom to tell my dad. And my little sister at that time just couldn't keep a secret. So the pressure was like, hurry up and say this, or it's going to come out when you don't want it to. So make the decision now, by force, to tell your dad. So I tell him, I'm bawling, I'm crying. And he was just quiet. He just listened. And it was really sweet in that moment. And I think it really helped me stay grounded. My little sister was like holding me from behind and she was like hugging me. Oh, it was the sweetest thing. It really helped because I was trembling in fear of telling him. And while I was saying it, so having her there in that moment was like the anchor that I needed to be able to just let it out. So I was able to stay in the home. Everything stayed as is. Um, it just kind of began a shift in the family of change of like, well, what does that mean for church and your friends and your life and your work? Um, and then that kind of led into like, what are you going to do for work? And my parents really questioned my experience as an entrepreneur. And all they wanted for me was to just be taken care of. And so coming out as a lesbian and at the same time, in a way, providing for myself, like went against that belief and that understanding they had of like, my girls are going to have a husband, the husband is going to take care of them, have a roof over their head, and then they're going to give me grandkids, and it's going to be so good. None of that happened. Like their dreams for me, it still hasn't happened because it's not going to happen how they want it. I'm not going to bust out grandkids so you can go and uh, talk about that with your friends. Number one, that's not why I'm here. And number two, you haven't even earned a right to be able to know if I'm going to have kids because they're not for you. I don't know if I'm going to have kids. I'm just going to put a pin in that, okay? We're going to put a pin in that and we'll come back to that when we're ready. So, like regrowing up in my 20s, I feel like that's that's what happened in my 20s was like regrowing, healing a lot of the parts of me that my parents didn't nurture very well at all and allowing myself to heal those parts that were very wounded and very hurt. And even like, what's the word? Like when, like stunted. My emotional internal world was very stunted because I had to be an adult and a parent at the age of a child. So I didn't get to be a child. My counselor kind of says and explains it of like you had a very small window, basically. So anything that kind of pushes my edges was a lot because I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to be able to make decisions from a peaceful place. But over time, my window has expanded, my emotional um, spectrum experience, my emotional intelligence is a lot stronger than it was in my 20s, but there's still parts that need healing and it's being healed, and some parts just take time to heal. And so finally, that year, after telling my dad, months go by, and I think things between my friend and I were like okay. Like it was and then somehow eventually we ended up just not talking for months, not interacting for months, not really in relationship as friends. It was basically like I chose to just like not be there. I basically ghosted because I didn't know how to be in that relationship when someone didn't truly accept me for who I was. And I bet a lot of you can um relate when you're met with like, well, what does that say in the Bible? And blah blah blah. From the religious perspective coming at you to question you if the decisions for you are right or wrong. That shit has taken a lot of time to heal. And it's still being healed. I think it's at a better place because decision making is such a challenge for me, especially within the last 5 to 6 years of my life. Decision making, it was always like it was stunted again because of lots of stuff in my life and being an adult as a child, like I've said. So like over and over and over again, I've had practice to be able to make decisions that feel right in my body, especially as in human design, as a generator, how I make decisions is from my gut. Not everybody makes decisions from their gut. Like projectors and reflectors make decisions differently than a generator. So for me, I had to reconnect to my inner body, my inner knowing of how to make decisions. And so I made the decision unconsciously to just pull back from the relationship. And so I think we became more distant after that Christmas time frame, I think. I don't know, the time frame is a little bit hazy. Okay, so we became more distant. Now I remember. We became more distant after she told us some really important news. So I can't remember if it was summer, if it was winter. All I remember was this moment. So my friend comes over, it's a Sunday, and she's coming over to watch a movie or a game. I can't remember. But she asked me to come. She comes to my room and she asked me to come, or she texted me, I don't remember, but she asked me to go to the kitchen so that she could share some news with me and my mom. And she says, uh, that she says basically, like, I have cancer and it is already in, I think she said liver. So it had already really progressed. And she then kind of says, like, you're the first few people I've told, and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to dive into it. I just want to tell you and leave it as is. So I listen and I'm trying to be present, but I start to feel like my internal world, just like something inside of me was dropping. Kind of like in movies where you see the character jump and they're just falling into an abyss of blackness. Like that's kind of how I felt. That is how I felt. And the fact that she didn't want to talk about it was really hurtful too. But that was because she was really hurting with the news. She was, I want to say like 26 or 27 at the time. And I was also very angry. So she said she didn't want to talk about it. She was ready to go watch a movie. And so my mom joined her in watching a movie that evening. I went straight to my room. I went straight to my room. I crawled into my bed and I cried. I didn't just like cry a few tears. Like I cried so hard, I could feel the cry in my pelvis, in my hips. It was that deep of a cry. It was not just a sadness and an understanding of loss, because the thing hadn't been lost yet. Like she hadn't left this earthly realm yet. She was still here. It was the understanding that I am losing this person. I'm losing them. And there's nothing that I can do. And that I have to trust in this person's decision and who they're getting help with. But what made it even more heavy for me was years before that. My friend had mentioned, like, oh, I think I have this lump in my boob. And somebody else, like, checked it out for me and was like, yeah, I feel that. You need to get that checked out. So after telling them that they needed to get it checked out, they were unable to go, I believe, to get it checked out because of being a college student and at that time, or just right after she graduated, and not being able to afford health insurance, being afraid to talk with a doctor, and it just like shoving her off, not caring of her experience, and a lot of her own internal fears that I don't know all about, but I know that her fear of going to the doctor was strong enough to stop her from going to the doctor until it became a um, much more of a problem that she had to face it. So later on, she is able to get insurance. And as a teacher in Texas, I don't know what all that entails and what that looks like. But I know that that was one of the reasons that finally she was able to um, get that looked at. And that was one of the things that bridged the gap of her being able to follow through with, like, I really need to get this checked out. But what also was probably part of her experience was her own individual trauma with doctors, nurses, anything medical, health within the health world. I don't know what all those are, but I know that it was strong enough to keep her from going and getting it checked out. And that shit is not okay. And health insurance in America has got to become better and less, more accessible to the people who have money. It needs to be accessible for everyone, for everyone. It would have changed her experience if she would have been able to have access to health insurance while she was in college. I don't know if she did or didn't for sure, but I know that having health insurance that will cover the experience of cancer is going to make a massive difference. But I know that people really experience a massive challenge when cancer comes up because they don't want to pay for that shit. So, around that time that she had told us that she has cancer and it's really developed, she was going to go to London with me, my sister, and my sister's husband at that time. She ended up not being able to because she needed that money for taking care of her in that time, which I don't know what it all involved. It did involve later down the line of like getting treatments, getting, I believe, chemotherapy. Um, and so like she had to take care of herself and she did what she needed to do to her best ability that she could, uh, with the resources that she had and all that was there, all that she had to be able to help her during that time frame in her life. So I say all this because I know that my experience is different with coming out. Not everybody's experience is about, you know, more challenging things with death and life. And I recognize that talking about death and life is really hard for some people, but it's also part of living. It's part of life. No, I don't wish anyone to experience cancer. I don't wish it for anyone. And I say that with love. I do say that with love. So our friendship really started to be separate, and there really started to be a separateness as she was going on more of a chemotherapy journey. And I was, um, pardon me, pouring myself, well, not just pouring myself, but I was really hustling as an entrepreneur, and especially in the beginning stages of that. And there was a part of me that knew that I couldn't walk that journey with her because it would have been triggering and hard for her to walk through that, as I knew she was closeted. I don't know if she knew that, but I believe that maybe in another lifetime we would have been partners. Um, but in this current reality, within the story that I'm talking about, she wasn't able to do that. And that wasn't within her realm of possible experiences for her to have. And as being a member of a minority already, having one more thing, having one more thing that separates her was more traumatizing than what she was already going through. Was already enough hard. It was already enough trauma and loss and grief to be going through, and to add one more thing onto that of another thing I can't experience, another thing I can't have. Um, it's it was like that's enough. I don't need to experience any more deaths in my life than what I'm already going through. And so whether it was my spirit or my subconscious saying like we don't need to push it. So, like with Light and Love, I released myself from the relationship and released her into her journey as she was experiencing the lifestyle that comes along with an individual that's going through chemotherapy. And so there were more people that came around her to support her, to help raise funds, um, to help her be with her family. And a lot of those individuals were part of the Christian community, were part of the church. And since I was no longer internally had set that line in the sand, like I'm no longer part of this community, and you don't see me for who I fully am, so I'm not gonna partake in this anymore. So months go by. She's been going through chemotherapy, and internally, I was like, I need to set things straight with her, and I need to reach out, own my part, and be able to meet with her. And so I reached out. This was months later after she told me and my family. Probably about 8 months later, I think, 8 to 9 months. Um, and I sent her like a video. I recorded it on Zoom and I sent it to her via text. And I basically said like, I'm really sorry that I've been distant, but it's because of this thing that was said. And I didn't know how to move through it. I didn't know what to do. All I knew was to shrink. And so she agreed to meet and we had a conversation. I apologized for being distant and she apologized for saying those things that really hurt. And she was understanding of like, yeah, if anyone would have said that to me, I would have probably done the same thing or similar. So we had a meeting and I did my best and she did her best to be able to see the other person, their experience, and be able to apologize and forgive and move differently through life. So after that, she was like, I'm probably not going to be coming over for Sundays and having meals. And I'm like, I totally get that. I completely understand that. And we didn't hang out again, but we had this closure. Um, and this moment of being able to like acknowledge the relationship for what it was and that it wasn't going to be the same moving forward. And I understood that. And I understood the parts in which I played that caused harm. And I really appreciated that she heard me out and um, was really part of a moment of healing for me. So months go by, and it was February. I think it was the 28th of February. I'll have to look back. But I woke up, so it was winter at that time where I was living, and I believe it was a Sunday. I walk out of my room, still living with my parents at the time, and I go to make me a cup of coffee. And my dad randomly says, oh, so and so died. And it was really heartless when he said it. It was just kind of like a matter of fact. So I think that he was having a hard time dealing with it. And when he delivered the message to me, it was just non emotional. And I go to my room and I'm bawling. I'm bawling my eyes out. And like that heaving cry, it's not just I'm sad, it's a knowing and an understanding of like, okay, this person has officially left their human body. Their human body is no longer here or alive. And so that Sunday, I sat in my computer chair and cried and looked out the window, and I was there for hours. You know, like that moment in Twilight where she's depressed because she can't be around her vampire boyfriend? I was like that. I was that depressed. I was that sad. And I had a reason to be sad. But now here is where the good news comes in. So, whether you believe in spirituality or not, I want to share this experience, and it comes from a place of joy. It truly comes from a place of joy. So I'm sitting there in my computer chair, staring out the window, drinking my coffee, um, just stuck in a loop of sadness, grief, depression, and sitting with the loss that just occurred. And her spirit visits me. Her spirit visited me, and I knew it was her. I knew it was her because her energy would walk into the room with just this softness, this soft, loving, joyful self that would slowly brighten like a light that can dim and brighten. It was like that. Like she would slowly brighten up in the room. And I feel her sitting before me. And she says something along the lines of like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. I'm so sorry I didn't see you. And it was this energy of like, I'm sorry that I missed out on a deeper experience in our friendship. And I'm sorry that I didn't accept myself for who I truly was, or even allow myself to explore what a deeper relationship with you would have been like. And then the waves of the cry and the deep heaving and the loss just rolls through again like waves. And it rolls and rolls and rolls through me. And all I could do was cry. I couldn't respond with my words, but I could respond with my spirit, with my energy. And it was like she just sat there with me. And we just sat there. Like we didn't need to over explain, redirect the conversation, or change up the conversation, or avoid the pain. We simply just sat in it. And that brought in this understanding of, yeah, not going through the woulda, coulda, shouldas, just sat in the pain. And eventually my sister comes over, and it really helped to have her around because it was just such a deep, painful moment. If you've ever experienced the loss of a fur baby, if you've experienced the loss of a loved one, a friend, or whatever that may be, it could have been any type of loss. You understand what it means of when I say pain. because the loss of that person being person, place, or thing that reminded you of someone that meant so much to you, sitting with that pain of that loss was huge. And I think a lot of the time we don't allow space to sit with that hard pain because the body doesn't want to experience it. The body experiences it like we were actually physically hurt by something like a stab or a scratch or more like a stab. The body experiences it the same, physically or emotional pain. And what I've learned from that experience was that it's important to feel and understand that experience of loss, of pain, of grief, and to not run away from that. So before she passed away, she had, my friend had an open invitation to my parents to sit and have a conversation so that they could experience healing in their relationships outside of me. And they never followed through. They never reached out. My mom was avoidant, and so was my dad. They never had a moment to apologize. They never had a moment to be able to forgive themselves for the pain that they caused. And because of that, they have closed themselves off to experiencing growth and experiencing the human experience. So, grief, loss, pain, depression, whatever it may be, it's important to feel those things in the moment when it hits and to take the time needed to sit with it. But our job is to not remain there in the sadness, in the depression, in the belief, and in the thoughts of like, oh my God, they're not here and they're never going to come back. If you are a spiritual person, you know, you understand that yes, their body is not physically here, but I can still talk to them. I can still reach out. We can still chat. I may not be able to see you, but I see you in my heart. I see you there. And I know you there in that space, in that spiritual space. So you have not lost them. You have lost the physical container that they were in, but you have not lost them. Unless if they don't want to talk to you in the spirit realm or you don't know how to, then yeah, you've lost them. But if you understand the spiritual realm from a non-religious perspective, hopefully, if not, if it's in the religious perspective, okay, I hope you're open to understanding that we can experience our lost loved ones, even in the spiritual realm. And so, as my life began to change drastically after that, and no longer being part of the church community, Christianity, I now more identify with just I'm spiritual. I'm not religious. I am deconstructing from growing up religious, but I am not a religious individual, and I am not a Christian. I don't think I will ever identify with a religion and like call it my own. Currently, if that changes, I'll let you know, but I'm not there. I'm even at a point in my deconstruction where I do not believe that Jesus is it. And that took a lot for me to get to that point. And I have learned that there are ways that I can save myself. Yeah, I can emotionally regulate myself, which is not taught in the Christian community. So months and months go by, and I'm having multiple experiences in the spiritual realm with my friend. There's more conversations about hard things, about love, about going back to things where we were apologizing, like, I really didn't say what I needed to say in that moment, and it came across like this, and this is what I meant. This is what I was trying to say, and I apologize. And there were even conversations of just lightheartedness and having fun, being funny, and I got to see her in different parts of herself. So my spiritual gifts are like I can see into the spiritual realm, I can sense, I can hear, I see in color, especially in my dreams, I see in color. Um, I can't really think of them all because my experience and my spiritual experiences are just like so natural that I don't always pick up on like, oh, that's different. That's a spiritual ability, Nessa. That's something that makes you different. And my sisters really help point those things out and how I am different and how I interact with the spiritual realm. So that moment in experiencing my friend through the spiritual realm truly helped me to understand that I see, I do know, I can trust my intuition, and I can see. So oftentimes when she's trying to help me understand something, she'll say like, as I was, so is this. And she's saying, as we were in our friendship, as close as we were, and as much as we saw each other through the ugly, through the joyful, and everything in between, as I am, as I was, so is this. So is this. Like, this is real. I'm not lying to you. I'm not going to lie to you. And you can trust me. Trust is one of the biggest things that I am unlearning and relearning. It's really fucking hard sometimes. It's really stretching me. But when she comes through and she tells me, you can trust this, then I trust it. Because we had this connection, this understanding of like, you get me, I get you. We see this. We may not agree on the same thing, but we see it. And she had her own spiritual abilities in human form. She sure did. Um, this one story I want to leave us with, and then we're gonna call it a close for this series. So there was this experience when she was with me in human form, and I was experiencing a chronic migraine. So I've experienced chronic migraines since about the age of 12, 13. Puberty hit for me earlier in life. So this wasn't because of puberty, it was whatever it was. So I'm in like my mid 20s and it's a Sunday again because we mostly saw each other on Sundays once she was working. Um, and so when she was in college, we got to see each other more often throughout the week, but Once she got a real adult job, we then were just able to hang out on like the weekends. So it's a Sunday. She comes into my room. I am like curled up in a ball, I think, because I'm in so much pain. So my migraine was, I usually have them like globally. So meaning like the entire head, uh, through the neck and shoulders is usually where I experience it. And so she comes over to me and she just like simply put her hands on my head. And then she was like very gently moving them around and just like holding her hands there. And I could feel this energy through that touch and from her of like the the migraine being like pulled away through like imagine if there were like suction cups all over my head connected to tubes, like sucking it out. Like it was just as she was touching my head, like she was, as you can see me, and she wasn't saying anything. So what's weird is like it's like a double weird. So like in the Christian community that I was in and have experienced through different churches, like the thing about laying on of hands was very much a thing. And like asking somebody to pray for you, and then they would like say something while maybe they hold your hands or touch that part on the body not inappropriately to like they didn't know it at the time. I don't know if they'll ever know it, but it's like this transmutation of energy. And so she was transmuting this energy just by like touching my head. And so she pauses in between and she looks at me and she's like, "How are you feeling?" And I was like, "You're not saying anything." Because there's that preconceived notion in Christianity that you're supposed to pray using your mouth while you're laying on of hands, and she wasn't doing that. So while she was just there being quiet, it was like an aha moment, like a moment in awe of the energy that she could transmute and that she could change. She wasn't manipulating it. She was just being. She was just following her intuition. She was just following the next right step that she felt like was important to do and to help me not feel pain. And so she does it again and it starts to feel more relieved. And on that day, I had probably already taken naproxen, Tylenol, ibuprofen, like we do the drugs. We do the over the counter drugs to try and help this pain move through. But I think it was a very beautiful moment to be able to experience the laying on of hands from her energy that then later in my life experience, when I experience that again through and within the spiritual realm, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was her. And from that experience with her, where she's sitting with me and we're sad and we're in my room, I could see her energy. And if I closed my eyes, I could see her. But if I just had my eyes open, I could just see the reality around me, like my room, my bed, my ottoman, the pieces of furniture in my room. But my energy recognized her energy. And because it could, I knew that she was, and I knew that she was there with me. And so I think it's beautiful moments like that, that our ancestors, our guides, our past friends, family members will speak to us through those things that we experienced with them in in human life experience. So whenever you could see them in their bodies, maybe there was like that one handkerchief or that one flower or that one dish or the way that they made tortillas or rolls or pie. Those things connect us back to them. And those are the things that we hold on to that help us remember their energy. But their energy isn't gone. If we just ask them to show up, they will. They will. And if you ask for a sign, they will show you. And so in my next videos, I want to talk about more of these spiritual experiences because this wasn't my first. This for damn sure wasn't my first, but it was the catapult that moved me into a more deeper exploration. I don't know what to call it, but like a time of learning my skills spiritually and my gifts spiritually. So her life, yes, wasn't here in human form anymore, but for damn sure she was in the spiritual realm. And I was still able to connect with her, and I was still able to talk with her, and I was still able to have conversations and laugh and just talk about whatever. And that back and forth connection that we had continued to solidify my abilities because I couldn't see them being in the religious culture. I just couldn't because in Christianity, you're so shut off from yourself, especially as a woman. Um, you don't hold any power. And if you do, it's still questioned. So I hope that this story helps you see that you can reconnect with your friends and your family that have passed. And you don't have to have all the right tools to connect with them. You don't have to have a tarot reader. You don't have to have somebody else to tell you the messages. You can do it yourself. I love tarot readings. I do those all the time. But most of the time, those are for me and for my sisters. And those things aren't like meant for certain people. Like we all can have those abilities if we want them. And if you want them, so it is. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm excited to start talking more about this spiritual stuff because there is nowhere that I have seen where people and places on the internet world are talking about this stuff. And maybe it's just my algorithm. I'm not sure. Um, but we're going to talk more about these things. And I'm super excited to bring you along the journey to hear what you have to say. Um, so thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for just being here with me. So, sending you so much love. I'll see you very soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. You can share this with somebody else. Hopefully, it helps them, maybe spark up their own spiritual gifts. So, we're going to talk more about this stuff. But until then, I'll see you later. Bye.